You ever watch someone who tried to destroy your family get handcuffed in front of a full courtroom while the jury stares her down like a liar they already knew she was? That's what happened the day Karen, the HOA president who forged my dead father's signature, poisoned my creek, and tried to steal my land through a fake company, finally faced everything she did. And the wildest part? She thought she'd walk free. She really did, until her own board president took the stand and dropped a secret that made the whole room gasp. That was the day I realized. Some people don't break until they're exposed under oath. Stay with me, because this is the part where it all came crashing down. My name is Eli Morgan. I'm 39 years old, 6'2", with a frame that still carries the tension of 10 years in a tech office and the silence of too many lonely nights. I've got lines under my eyes that weren't there 5 years ago, a habit of clenching my jaw when I'm thinking, and a voice that only recently remembered how to laugh without sounding tired. I never planned on coming back to Texas, but life has a way of dragging you home when you least expect it. 6 months ago, I was still wearing button-downs and presenting quarterly roadmaps to billion-dollar clients in Palo Alto. My job? Senior product manager at a supply chain software firm, one of those startups that grew fast and quietly took over everything. My entire world revolved around metrics, timelines, and keeping CEOs from blowing up during delays. I was good at it. Too good. It ate my life. I lived alone in a high-rise condo with more concrete than soul. Got divorced 2 years ago after my wife said she was tired of being alone in a marriage. I couldn't blame her. I kept telling myself I'd fix things once we launched the new platform, but the platform launched, and the silence stayed. Then came the phone call. My dad was dead. Heart attack, quick. No pain, they said. Like that was supposed to be comforting. I flew back to Texas the next day. The ranch looked smaller than I remembered, but quieter too. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for attention. It just fills your lungs and waits. 15 acres of old oak trees, a tired but sturdy house, and a creek that still ran clear in the morning light. I buried my father with calloused hands I barely remembered him having. I stood next to a mother who had grown smaller and stronger all at once. My plan was simple. Take a sabbatical, help Mom get the place cleaned up, and go back. But that plan started unraveling the moment I stepped onto the porch that first evening. The wind carried stories. The land felt heavy. My father's boots still sat by the door. I'd been home for 2 weeks when she arrived. Karen Jennings didn't knock. She materialized. She drove a spotless, white Audi SUV, the kind with cameras in every mirror and a license plate frame that read, "Living my best life." She stepped out like she was posing for a real estate magazine, head high, arms sculpted from yoga and gossip, fingers adorned with enough rings to catch the sun 3 times over. She wore a pale lemon blouse tucked into pearl-white slacks that didn't have a single speck of dust on them, despite the gravel drive. Her heels were designer, thin, sharp, and far too clean for ranch land. Her hair was platinum blonde, pulled back in a sculpted twist that probably required its own stylist. Not a single strand dared move. Her eyebrows were tattooed into a permanent arch of judgment, and her lips were the kind of matte pink that screamed HOA board meeting at 7 and rosé brunch by 11. But it was her eyes that got me. Cold, calculating. The eyes of a woman who smiled through every threat and never forgot a name or a grudge. I was by the front gate, reinforcing a fence post that had loosened in the storm. My hands were covered in dirt and sweat, and the hammer in my grip felt heavier than usual. She strutted up the drive like she owned the place, clipboard in hand, and stopped exactly 5 feet away, close enough to make her presence known, far enough to pretend it was polite. "You must be Mr. Morgan," she said, voice like silk stretched over barbed wire. "Eli, right?" I wiped my hands on my jeans, offering no handshake. "That's me." "I'm Karen Jennings," she said, enunciating each syllable like it was a brand. "President of the Clear Hollow Ridge Homeowners Association. We're right next door." "Yeah," I said. "I know Clear Hollow." "Well, we wanted to officially welcome you to the neighborhood," she said, smile gleaming but hollow. "And just check in. A few things have come up." She opened her clipboard with a rehearsed flick, revealing a stack of printed papers and a manila envelope beneath. Concerns, really, about the aesthetic of the property. I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the ranch?" "Let's just say some of our residents have expressed discomfort," she said, giving a wide sweep of her hand toward the old barn, the shed, the trees. "From the road, it can be unsettling. The fencing, for instance. And the condition of that storage structure near the creek?" "That structure is a shed my father built in 1978, I said. "Every board was cut by hand. I helped him when I was 8. Karen's smile didn't flicker. "Well, I'm sure it has sentimental value," she said, eyes already glazing over. "But sentiment doesn't pay for curb appeal. Clear Hollow Ridge is an upscale development. Appearances matter." I took a breath. "We're not part of your HOA, I said. "Technically, no," she admitted. "But adjacency still affects community values, especially with how visible your property is from several lots." She reached into her folder and handed me the envelope. "We'd like to make you an offer. It's well-researched and quite generous, considering the state of the property. Our board has plans to expand recreational facilities, and your land is a perfect fit." I stared at the envelope, but didn't open it. "Not interested." Karen's smile tightened, just a little. "Eli, this isn't personal," she said. "You're a tech man, right? Logical, practical. What are you really going to do with this land? Chase chickens? Grow hay?" I let the silence hang before replying. "I'm going to take care of my mother. I'm going to fix the place up. And I'm going to make sure nobody lays a hand on what's ours. Especially not some HOA committee with a god complex." Karen's mouth twitched, just enough to crack the gloss of her composure. "Being neighbors can be easy," she said, stepping back toward her Audi. "Or they can be complicated. It's your choice." She turned without another word, heels stabbing gravel like she was trying to leave holes in the earth. The SUV door clicked shut, and the engine purred to life. As she backed out, her window rolled down. One last parting shot. "Don't wait too long to change your mind, Eli. The market's not kind to stubborn men." And then she was gone, like a storm cloud that hadn't rained yet. But I had the feeling she would. I stood in the dirt, envelope in hand, wind rustling the oaks behind me. My father's shed stood quietly in the background, unbothered by modern concerns. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't have to. Karen Jennings had just fired the first shot, and I don't forget the sound of war when it's St. Karen didn't waste time. 3 days after she left my driveway in a puff of ego and expensive perfume, a notice appeared nailed, yes, nailed to our front gate. A bright orange sheet of paper with words like hazard, non-compliance, and community standards violation. It looked official, but we weren't in their HOA. We weren't even zoned for residential enforcement under their charter. I pulled it down, stared at it, then looked over at my mom sitting on the porch swing, a glass of sweet tea trembling slightly in her hand. "They used to send those to your father, too," she said. "Never this bold, though." The notice claimed our fencing was unsafe, that the brush near the creek constituted a fire hazard, that our structures were in breach of local code. There were threats of fines, enforcement, further inspection, all of it empty. I made a few calls. County officials confirmed what I already knew. They had no record of a complaint, and the HOA had no authority here. It was posturing, pressure, a warning shot across the bow. But Karen didn't stop there. The next morning, I heard a knock, light, precise. Not the kind of knock that asks for permission, the kind that expects obedience. When I opened the door, a man in a county inspector badge stood there, clipboard in hand. "Thomas Green," he said. "We've had several anonymous reports about code violations on this property." He wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked who filed them, wouldn't show the forms, just started walking the perimeter, taking photos without asking. "You're trespassing," I said. "I have authority from—" "You have nothing," I snapped. "This is private land. Unless you've got a signed order, turn around." He left, but not before mumbling that we'd hear from his office. I went straight to Sarah. She wasn't just a friend anymore, she was our legal shield now. "Karen's trying to build a paper trail," she told me. "She's setting the stage to justify something bigger." "Like what?" "Eminent domain, harassment, public nuisance. If she can make it look like you're a danger to the neighborhood, she can push for legal intervention." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're serious?" She nodded. "She's laying bricks, one complaint at a time. That same week, our mailbox was knocked over. Twice. Then, someone dumped a pile of dead tree limbs across our driveway. Just enough to block my truck. No notes. No footprints. Just the smell of pine sap and cheap retaliation. The camera I'd mounted above the barn caught a blurry figure in the early morning hours. Hooded, tall, fast. I sent it to the sheriff's office. No follow-up. Then came the fake letters. One morning I found a sealed envelope on our porch. Inside was a letter on county letterhead, poorly forged, claiming we had 15 days to clear out excess structures and debris. The language was sloppy, the formatting wrong. But my mother was scared. "They're trying to break us," she said. "That's what they did to your father." At night, I'd hear trucks idling on the road just outside our gate. No headlights, just the low growl of engines, watching, waiting, reminding us. Karen never showed her face again, not yet. But I knew it was her. She had minions, neighbors too afraid to speak, people in her pocket. People like Thomas Green, the inspector who suddenly had a lot of free time to harass us, but no time to explain the phantom paperwork he kept referencing. Sarah filed an official cease and desist against the HOA. We documented everything. Every notice, every tire track, every late-night noise and light. And still, it escalated. I came home from a supply run one day to find our livestock gate open. 2 of our goats had wandered down toward the creek. Another was limping from a cut leg. I followed the hoof prints to the fence line. Someone had cut the wire with bolt cutters. Deliberate, surgical. I repaired it myself, hands shaking, not from fear, but fury. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the perimeter with a flashlight, a baseball bat in my hand, the old dog trailing at my heels. The trees creaked. The stars watched in silence. That's when I found it. A fresh trench, barely covered, still moist dirt. And inside, PVC piping. New, clean, leading straight from the creek. It hadn't rained in weeks, but the ground had been dug, a pipe installed, buried fast, and not by amateurs. I stood there in the dark, staring at the beginning of something ugly, and I whispered more to myself than anyone else. "Karen, you picked the wrong man to dig under." The next morning, I didn't drink my coffee. I stared at it, cooling on the porch rail, steam curling into nothing as I replayed what I saw last night. That fresh trench, the exposed pipe, the violation of everything sacred about this land. Karen wasn't just playing dirty. She was stealing from us. Not metaphorically, literally. That creek had been here longer than any of us. My grandfather used to call it the ranch's heartbeat. He said if you ever wanted to know how healthy the land was, check the water. Cold, clean, constant. The kind of water people would kill for, and apparently the kind they'd steal for. I called Sarah first. She didn't answer. Left a message. Then I called the county water district. After a half hour of bureaucracy, I got routed to a guy named Dave Wilson, a survey supervisor. He was polite, cautious. But when I told him about the buried line and who I suspected had installed it, he went quiet. "You're going to want to get a private surveyor," he said after a beat. "One you trust, not one from the county list. And document everything. Pictures, depth, coordinates. Don't touch it until you do." That told me all I needed to know. I hung up, went inside, grabbed my old DSLR, and walked back to the trench. I took photos from every angle, measured the width, dug further until the pipe's direction was unmistakable. It ran from our creek, under the fence line, and into Clear Hollow Ridge. They'd tapped the source. I called a surveyor I knew from high school, David Tran. He showed up that afternoon, a no-nonsense guy in cargo shorts and a wide-brimmed hat. An hour later, he confirmed it. "The pipeline's 32 feet into your property. It's professionally installed. Trenching machine, not hand-dug. The work's fresh. Within the last 2 weeks." "Can you map it?" I asked. "Already did," he said, holding up a digital tablet. "And Eli, this line goes straight to that little fake lake Clear Hollow calls a water feature." My mouth went dry. Sarah finally called back that evening. I laid it all out. The trench, the pipe, the theft. "This is huge," she said. "They've crossed the line, literally and legally." She came by that night. We sat at the kitchen table, the overhead light humming quietly, the creak audible through the screen door. "They didn't ask," I said. "They didn't warn us. They just took it." Sarah pulled her glasses off and rubbed her temples. "Because they assumed you wouldn't fight back. Your dad didn't, not really. He resisted, but he never escalated." I felt a stab of guilt. "He was tired," I muttered. Sarah nodded. "They counted on that." She drafted an immediate cease and desist to the Clear Hollow Ridge HOA, sent it certified overnight, included photos, surveyor reports, and a demand for removal of all infrastructure within 5 business days. We both knew they'd ignore it, but it was the first step in drawing the line, and we weren't done. The next day, I rented a drone, flew it over the property, tracing the path of the pipe as far as it would allow. The aerial shots showed it perfectly, a direct connection to the Clear Hollow irrigation system. Even better, it caught movement, workers adjusting something near the faux waterfall at the lake's edge. I posted the video to a locked folder. Password protected, duplicated copies sent to Sarah, David, and my sister Jennifer, just in case. Because this wasn't just a land dispute anymore. This was theft, trespassing, fraud. We contacted the sheriff. Again. This time, I insisted on an in-person visit. Sheriff Miller arrived the next morning, slow, deliberate, his boots too clean for someone who claimed to patrol rural areas. I showed him the trench, the pipe, the documents. He nodded, said he'd look into it. I didn't believe a word. After he left, I checked the perimeter. Again. That's when I noticed the second trench, further east, near the old fence line. Another tap-in, older, shallower, covered hastily with rocks. This wasn't a one-time theft. This was a network. They'd been draining our water for months, maybe longer, while sending their cronies to deliver fake notices and cut our fences. That evening, Sarah met with Jennifer, my younger sister. She was a journalist, sharp as a whip, and more ruthless than I'd ever be. "They're playing dirty," Jennifer said. "So we hit them where it hurts. Exposure, pressure, shame." We started planning. Sarah filed for an emergency injunction. Jennifer drafted a story outline for her editor at the regional paper. David prepped a sworn affidavit on the pipeline's location and direction. I installed more cameras, trail cams, motion lights, even a backup solar drone. But none of it prepared me for what came next. 2 nights later, the camera near the creek caught them. 3 figures, flashlights, shovels. One carried a pump. They weren't removing the pipe. They were upgrading it. At 2:16 a.m., the lead guy, tall, stocky, voice unmistakable, called someone on speakerphone. "It's Brad," he said. "We're almost done. The new pump should boost it by 30%. Pause. "Yes, Miss Jennings. Understood." Karen. Her voice wasn't on the tape, but her name was. We had her. Karen had finally overplayed her hand. That audio clip, Brad confirming the upgrade and name-dropping her, wasn't just damning. It was dynamite. The kind of thing that could rip apart the polished illusion Clear Hollow had spent millions constructing. Sarah called it the tipping point. Jennifer called it blood in the water. I just called it proof. We didn't wait. Sarah filed for a temporary restraining order the next morning, citing illegal encroachment, theft of water, and continued trespassing after formal notification. She attached everything: photos, survey maps, Brad's voice on the tape. It wasn't a lawsuit yet, but it was the first hammer swing. And Karen? She knew it. By noon, 2 black SUVs with tinted windows rolled slowly past our ranch. Not fast, not subtle, just slow enough to be noticed. Just slow enough to whisper, "We're watching you." Jennifer started compiling footage for her exposé. She narrated the trench video, overlaid the audio from Brad's call, added maps, and dug up Clear Hollow's flashy promotional materials that bragged about their sustainable private water system. The hypocrisy was delicious. We were preparing to go public, but Karen moved first. 2 days later, I found our tractor covered in shards of glass. Its fuel line had been sliced with what looked like a box cutter. Sugar poured into the tank. Vandalism, plain and simple. Sheriff Miller came out again, took notes, and left without promises. "Hard to prove intent," he said. "Could have been kids." "Kids don't pour sugar in diesel," I snapped. He didn't argue. That same night, the words "sell and leave" were spray-painted across the barn doors in red paint. Mom stood there in silence, arms folded, the porch light catching the lines in her face. "Your father built this with his hands," she said. "They want to scare us, but they don't know who they're dealing with." Sarah's law firm helped fast-track an environmental inspection request. The state sent out a water specialist to document the pipeline. The moment he confirmed it connected to Clear Hollow's man-made lake, things started moving faster. That's when the news broke. Jennifer's story dropped online at 9:02 a.m. sharp. Within minutes, it was picked up by regional news outlets. Headline: Luxury HOA accused of stealing water from neighboring ranch. It spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, a local NBC affiliate was parked outside our front gate. Drones flew overhead. Questions poured in. Reporters wanted interviews. HOA members wanted answers. And Karen? Karen went ballistic. She held an emergency press conference in front of the Clear Hollow Community Center. I watched it on my phone as she stood at a podium flanked by HOA board members, trying to look calm. "This is a gross mischaracterization," she said, her voice straining. "Clear Hollow has always operated within the law. These allegations are inflammatory, misleading, and will be addressed through appropriate channels." She never denied the pipeline. She never mentioned the tape. That night, a crowd of Clear Hollow residents gathered outside our property line. Some held signs, "We deserve water," and "Morgan" and "Monopoly." Others just stood there unsure who to believe. One woman, Lisa Thompson, I'd met her once before, stepped forward. "We need answers, Karen," she shouted toward the HOA clubhouse. "Where's our money going?" It turned out Brad wasn't the only one whispering. Jennifer received a flash drive in an unmarked envelope the next day. Inside, Clear Hollow, HOA meeting recordings, dozens of them. And in one, Karen casually mentioned borrowing a bit of water from the old man's land. Everyone laughed. No one objected. The leak was from inside. We doubled down. Sarah filed an official civil complaint, this time naming Karen Jennings and Brad Thompson as co-defendants. Trespassing, water theft, property damage, conspiracy to defraud. And that's when Karen snapped. The very next night, someone cut the power to our house. Clean slice. Wires snipped at the pole. We were lucky the backup generator kicked in. I stayed up, shotgun on my lap, camera feeds on the tablet beside me. I didn't sleep. At 3:46 a.m., headlights appeared at the edge of our drive, a single car. It didn't move, just sat there, engine running. After 10 minutes, it pulled away. No license plate. I was done playing defense. The next morning, we went public with the rest of the footage. Not just the pipeline, not just Brad, the vandalism, the threats, the sheriffs in action. Sarah held a press conference on the porch. Jennifer live-streamed it. "Clear Hollow has operated like a private kingdom for years," Sarah said. "That ends now." Later that day, the district attorney's office contacted us. They wanted to talk. And Karen? She finally went quiet. For the first time since Karen Jennings drove up our gravel road and tried to buy my father's legacy with a smirk and a manila envelope, the tide turned. It started with a voicemail. "This is Assistant District Attorney Maria Rivas. Mr. Morgan, I'd like to set up a meeting regarding your complaint and the supporting evidence. We believe your case may constitute multiple criminal violations." I played it back 3 times just to hear it again. Finally, someone in power was paying attention. Sarah arranged the meeting. We gathered everything: photos, time-stamped drone footage, Brad's voice on tape, surveyor reports, the hacked power line, even the forged inspection letter. We had binders, USB drives, names. The meeting took place in the DA's office downtown, a cold, professional space with gray carpet and a view of the courthouse. Ada Rivas didn't waste time. "What you've shown us," she said, flipping through the file, "suggests not only civil trespass and water theft, but conspiracy to commit fraud, environmental code violations, and possible forgery of public documents. That's a felony in Texas." Her voice was steady, calm, but there was fire beneath the surface. "We've opened a formal investigation." The next morning, subpoenas landed on Karen's desk, Brad's home, and the HOA's office. By noon, the local news was running the story under a new banner: "DeLaunches criminal probe into Clear Hollow Ridge, HO." I expected Karen to retreat, to vanish. I underestimated her pride. She doubled down. Suddenly, anonymous complaints flooded the county office about our land: alleged illegal pesticide use, alleged unsafe livestock practices. One even claimed we were running an unlicensed Airbnb in the barn. The inspector who showed up this time wasn't green. He was younger, looked uncomfortable. "I have to write these up," he said, holding the clipboard like it burned. "But off the record, everyone knows what's going on." We let him do his job. Photographed everything, signed nothing. But Karen's desperation turned dark. One night I came home to find the front door open. Not kicked in, just ajar. Inside, drawers were pulled, paper scattered, nothing taken, just touched, moved, violated. No broken glass, no signs of forced entry. Sarah suspected someone with access. A contractor, a county contact, someone bribed. Mom didn't sleep for 3 nights after that. I bought new locks, reinforced the doors, put cameras inside the house. Then came the email. It landed in Sarah's inbox. No sender, no signature, just a PDF titled Agreement, Morgan Ranch, 2018. It was a scanned document, a supposed water easement agreement signed by my father, but he never signed that. We compared it to Dad's real signature from the property deed. The loops were wrong. The slant was too modern, and he would never have called himself E. Morgan Sr., a name that didn't exist. Forgery, plain and simple. Jennifer dug in, and 2 days later she found it. A real estate case from 5 years ago involving another HOA Karen had worked with. Same playbook: harass, pressure, forge, win. That was the crack. Sarah contacted Ada Rivas immediately. They issued a search warrant for the Clear Hollow Ridge HOA's records. When deputies arrived at the HOA office, they found Brad inside, shredding documents. He was arrested on the spot. By that evening, Brad had agreed to cooperate. His statement was damning. He described the entire operation: the pipeline installation, ordered by Karen, the forged letter to the county, the fake inspection signed off by Thomas Green. The decision to sabotage our tractor meant to scare, not hurt, he said. But the worst part? Karen's plan to buy the headwaters. She had found out we were preparing to secure the source of the creek, the spring higher up in the hills. If she got to it first, she could control the flow legally, cut us off entirely, and she was days away from closing the deal. We moved fast. Sarah created an LLC under a third-party name. We filed the offer, paid the deposit, filed the deed. We beat her by 48 hours. We now owned the spring, the literal source of all water that ran through our land and into hers. When Karen found out, she lost it. I don't know what she did exactly, but that evening she showed up at the property. First time since our confrontation months ago. She didn't drive up. She walked down the gravel path, alone, in heels, her face tight with rage, her platinum bun unraveling slightly. "I want to talk," she said. I didn't move. "You've embarrassed me. Made a spectacle of something that could have been resolved civilly." "You trespassed," I said. "You stole water. You vandalized my family's land." Her eyes flickered. "You don't know what kind of people I deal with. I was protecting this community." "No," I said. "You were protecting your power." She took a shaky breath. "You're making a mistake, Eli. I know people. You'll regret this. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon." "You threatened my family," I said coldly. "And now the state is coming for you. Get off my land." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. It was the last time I saw Karen Jennings free. The next morning, a grand jury indictment was filed. Ada Rivas held a press conference. Charges included conspiracy, water theft, environmental violations, property damage, and forgery. Karen was arrested outside a luxury hair salon. Her mugshot was on the news by 6 p.m., and Clear Hollow, chaos. Residents demanded a full audit. HOA board members resigned en masse. Lisa Thompson formed a reform group. Donations poured in for legal support, for us. It wasn't just about water anymore. It was about every homeowner who'd ever been bullied, manipulated, or ignored by people like Karen. And we had just lit the match. You'd think after an indictment, a public arrest, and media fallout that stretched from Texas to tech blogs in California, Karen Jennings would finally crawl back into her mansion and disappear. But people like Karen don't go quietly. She had one more move, one last strike, forged in desperation and soaked in venom, and it nearly broke everything. The week following her arrest, peace crept back into our days. For the first time in months, the ranch felt still. Birds returned to the trees. My mother walked to the creek without glancing over her shoulder. I started sleeping again. Not heavily, but without the shotgun by my bed. We were winning. The HOA had voted to suspend operations pending audit. Lisa Thompson, now acting president, reached out to us formally. We began negotiating a proper water access agreement. Fair, legal, clean. We even planned a joint town hall meeting. Jennifer, always thinking ahead, pitched a local documentary crew on the idea of turning the case into a mini-series. The working title? The Woman Who Tried to Steal a River. But then, everything halted. It started with a certified letter. The State Environmental Protection Division had flagged our property for a potential contamination violation. I stood in the kitchen, the letter trembling in my hands. My name, my address, and the creek, our creek, listed as a potential site of industrial chemical runoff. The penalty? Immediate suspension of water use, which meant shutting off the headwaters, which meant Clear Hollow would go dry. Again. I called Sarah. She was already on her way. "It's a setup," she said flatly, eyes scanning the letter. "Timing's too perfect. Who could have done this? Karen's under indictment." Jennifer, seated at the table with a laptop open, shook her head. "She's not in prison yet, and she still has friends." One of those friends, as it turned out, was Thomas Green, the original code inspector Karen had used to harass us in the beginning. He was still employed by the county, still had access. And according to Jennifer's digging, he had quietly submitted the contamination report 3 days earlier, based on a sample collected from the creek. We needed answers. Fast. I hired a private water testing firm out of Austin. Sarah filed a formal counterclaim to the state order, buying us 72 hours. The testing crew arrived the next morning, took samples from 5 different points along the creek, including the spring at the headwaters. The results came back the next day. Every sample upstream was clean, but one location, just past the property line where the creek crossed into Clear Hollow, showed high concentrations of industrial solvents, toxic, synthetic, the kind used in paint thinner and commercial degreasers. Deliberate. Someone poured chemicals into the creek, Olivia Parker, our environmental consultant, said. This wasn't runoff. This was placement. They had poisoned the water, and they had done it on our land to frame us. Sheriff Miller arrived, summoned by Sarah, and backed this time by the mayor himself. You know what this is, right? I said, standing by the creek, arms crossed. He nodded grimly. He called forensics. And this time, they showed up. Jennifer kept digging, and she struck gold, a shipment receipt, 1 week old. Delivery of 2 5-gallon drums of chlorinated solvents, purchased using a company credit card belonging to Clear Hollow's maintenance department. The delivery address? A vacant storage unit, leased to Karen Jennings, warrant, search. Inside the unit, they found gloves, chemical-stained clothing, a water sampling kit, and, most damning of all, a printed guide for how to submit anonymous environmental complaints to the state. Thomas Green was arrested the next morning. The footage of him being walked out of the county building in handcuffs played on every local station by noon. Karen's charges were expanded. Environmental sabotage, public endangerment, conspiracy to falsify government records. Her bail was revoked. She was transferred to a state facility to await trial. We shut the valve to the creek for exactly 12 hours, just enough to make a point, and then we turned it back on. Lisa called that evening. We voted, she said. Unanimous. The HOA wants to settle. We'll pay for a new legal pipeline. You name the conditions. And we did. Fair access, market rate payment, joint maintenance, and full disclosure of HOA finances, with Lisa's new board overseeing all infrastructure decisions. It wasn't just a win, it was justice. Karen had tried to bury us. Instead, she buried herself. That weekend, we held the town hall. Not at the Clear Hollow clubhouse, but at the Morgan Ranch. Neighbors came, reporters came, even the mayor showed up. We unveiled plans for the Morgan Conservation Trail, a creekside walking path and environmental education site co-funded by settlement money and community donations. Mom cried when she saw the new sign. Your father would have liked this, she whispered. He believed land wasn't just something you owned. It was something you protected. Later that night, as the sun set over the quiet water, I sat on the porch with Sarah and Jennifer. Karen was gone. The fear was gone. All that remained was the sound of the creek, flowing clean, steady, and free. And this time, it belonged to us. They say peace isn't something that arrives all at once. It drips in, quiet and cautious, like the first rain after a long, bitter drought. 3 weeks had passed since Karen Jennings was marched out of a hair salon in handcuffs. Since the settlement was signed, the checks started coming in, and the once-feared HOA board was gutted and replaced. Her name was still in the papers, but now it was followed by words like felony, forgery, and fraudulent contamination. The ranch felt different, not just safer, alive. The birds were back, their songs no longer drowned out by worry. The creek ran undisturbed, clear as crystal. For the first time in what felt like years, we exhaled. But with that silence came something unexpected, an ache, not pain, not trauma, just space. When your whole world is war, peace feels like vertigo, like waking up in a house that doesn't creak anymore, and wondering what's missing. I spent my mornings walking the perimeter, not to check for damage or signs of sabotage, but to remind myself it was over. I'd trail my fingers along the fence posts, watch dew cling to blades of grass, feel the early heat press through my shirt, and remember what air smelled like when it wasn't laced with fear. The new water pipeline was underway, a gleaming system of reinforced lines, county permits nailed to the posts, and workers in bright vests who waved every time they saw me. No secrets, no lies, just honest work being done in the open. Lisa Thompson, now acting president of the HOA, stopped by every week, not as a neighbor, not as a bureaucrat, as a person trying to rebuild trust. She brought muffins once. Mom cried over them. "I forgot what kindness from over that fence looked like," she whispered. Mom changed more than anyone. Her shoulders lost the tension she'd carried since Dad passed. Her hands, once always gripping something, mail, railing, worry, now rested in her lap when she sat. She started cooking again, not just meals, recipes. Her cinnamon pie made its first comeback since 2016. She hosted a book club, wore lipstick, laughed at the news. One evening, we sat on the porch swing, tea in hand, watching lightning bugs rise from the grass. "Stay," she said. "I am," I replied. "No," she said. "Not just to protect us. Really stay. Let this be your life." I looked out across the land. The barns, the trees, the rebuilt mailbox standing proud, the quiet. "I'll think about it," I said. But part of me already knew the answer. Sarah was coming around more often. At first it was about contracts, zoning clarifications, logistics. But over time, the briefcase got lighter and the dinners got longer. She'd show up with iced coffee and homemade sandwiches. Start cleaning up my tools when I forgot. One evening, she brought fresh tortillas from her aunt's kitchen and stayed until midnight, watching reruns with Mom. We didn't talk about what we were. We didn't need to. It was unfolding on its own. Jennifer's docuseries launched that same week. 6 episodes. Gritty, beautifully cut. The first one opened with drone footage of the creek at sunrise and a single line from my interview. "This land has been in my family for 3 generations. And I nearly lost it to a woman who never put her hands in its soil." The series exploded. News sites ran reviews. Reddit threads dissected every detail. We got letters, emails from strangers in Arizona, Oregon, Tennessee, sharing their own HOA horror stories, thanking us for fighting. "You gave people permission to push back," Jennifer said. "That's bigger than you know." One Saturday, Lisa invited us to a neighborhood BBQ at the Clear Hollow Greenbelt. I nearly declined. Too soon, I thought. But Sarah said, "You earned this. Let them thank you." So we went. The air was thick with charcoal and conversation. Music played through a Bluetooth speaker perched in a folding chair. Tables sagged under homemade potato salad, brisket, casseroles. Kids darted between coolers. Dogs begged for ribs. When we arrived, there was a moment of stillness. Then someone clapped, then another, then 10. People came up to shake my hand, to thank my mother. One woman cried into her napkin and said she'd been too afraid to speak up for years. Mike Hansen, Clear Hollow's quiet hero, raised a toast with a can of root beer. "To the Morgans, may your water always be yours and your fences stay strong." We left at dusk, full, changed. That night, a letter arrived. Thick envelope. No return address. Inside, a formal offer from the Texas Water Conservation Authority. They were forming a new advisory board. They wanted me on it, not as a lawyer, not as a scientist, as someone who'd lived the fight. "Your story is exactly what we need more of," the letter read. "Accountability, real-world perspective, and integrity." I showed Sarah. She smiled. "Looks like someone wants you to fight for more than one creek." The next morning, I said yes. And just like that, the man who once coded freight systems and ran from his grief had become something else entirely. A land steward, a partner, a survivor, and finally, after all the noise, a man at peace. It began on a gray Monday morning, the kind where the light never quite settles and the courthouse looms like something older than justice itself. I dressed quietly. Navy blazer, pressed shirt, jeans. My boots were polished, though I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that. My mother made coffee, but neither of us drank it. She just hugged me before I walked out the door a little longer than usual. The courthouse in Bracken County was built before World War I, all limestone pillars and narrow windows that let in just enough daylight to remind you weren't outside. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and formality. Security was minimal. Just a single metal detector and a deputy who nodded at Sarah and me like he'd seen the story unfold on the evening news. We sat in the second row. Karen Jennings was already there. Her power suit had been traded for something plainer, a beige blazer that hung too stiff on her frame, as though trying to recall the woman she used to be. Her hair was pulled into a practical ponytail. No pearls, no heels. Just sensible flats and a notepad she never once wrote on. She didn't look at me. The trial began promptly at 9 a.m. Ada Maria Rivas stood and addressed the jury with a calm, razor-sharp tone. This case is about arrogance. It's about a person who believed the law was something that could be bought, bent, or buried. But mostly, it's about a community that fought back. Then came the story. But this time it wasn't my voice telling it. It was witnesses, footage, exhibits. Brad Thompson, looking hollow-eyed and 2 sizes smaller than I remembered, walked the jury through everything. She said the Morgans would fold like the old man did, he said. Said they'd leave eventually. That we were just speeding things up. He confessed to installing the pipeline, admitted to cutting the wires on our gate, to pouring chemicals into the creek, thinking it would be enough to get the state involved. He said Karen promised him a promotion once the land changed hands. "And you believed her?" the prosecutor asked. Brad hesitated. "Back then, yeah. She made it sound like saving the neighborhood. Then came the documents, drone footage, survey maps, time-stamped emails. The forged letter, supposedly signed by my father. Sarah explained the inconsistencies. Jennifer provided context. Even the DA investigator took the stand. But it was Lisa Thompson who shifted the atmosphere entirely. She arrived in a blue floral dress and a steady voice. Karen didn't just run the HOA. She was the HOA. No decisions happened without her blessing. No money moved unless she approved it. She controlled votes, used fear. And if someone challenged her, she removed them. And then she said the words that cracked the courtroom open. She planned to seize the Morgan land through a shell company, Morgan Ridge Development. She called it the legacy flip, said it'd be the biggest win of her career. The courtroom murmured. Sarah leaned toward me. "She's done." Karen's attorney tried to object, tried to redirect. But the room was already lost. When Karen took the stand in her own defense, her voice was small, controlled, almost robotic. "I acted in the interest of the community," she said. "You forged documents?" "I don't recall." "You ordered infrastructure placed without permission?" "That was a misunderstanding." "You contaminated a water source?" "Absolutely not." But the jury wasn't buying it. Deliberation took 3 hours. They returned before sundown. Guilty. On all counts. Water theft, environmental sabotage, forgery, trespassing, criminal conspiracy. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month, but the DA pushed for immediate remand. The judge agreed. When the bailiff cuffed her, Karen flinched. She stood, hands trembling slightly, and for a brief second, just one, her eyes met mine. They weren't angry or sorry. They were hollow. Outside, reporters gathered under a bruised sky. Flashbulbs popped. Microphones chased my name. I let Jennifer answer, let Sarah guide me through it. I just wanted to go home. 3 nights later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a photo album, black leather, heavy, and old. Inside, one photo. My father by the barn, holding a mug and smiling, his eyes squinting in the Texas sun. And below it, a yellowed post-it note written in hard, neat script. He never gave in, neither did you. No signature, no hint, just quiet closure. We placed the album on the mantel, next to Dad's boots. That night, I lit a candle beside it. Let it burn until dawn. 2 weeks later, the Morgan Conservation Trail officially opened. Kids planted trees, local artists painted murals. Sarah gave a speech. Lisa read a statement from the HOA. The mayor showed up uninvited, but I let him speak anyway. When it was my turn, I stood with nothing written. Just a heart full of memories and a creek behind me that still sang like it had something to say. This land has been threatened, I said, poisoned, disrespected. But it endured, because truth endures. Because when good people stop running, the land gets to breathe again. They applauded. Some cried. That night, as Sarah and I sat on the porch with our feet up and the wind soft against the screens, she asked, "What do you think happens to her?" I looked out into the dark, at the silver of moonlight dancing on the creek. She'll sit and wait, and maybe someday understand what it feels like to have something taken from you just because someone else could. Sarah nodded. And us? We plant something new. And we did.